I'd like to thank you all for inviting me, especially Radhika Somasudram, who, because of whom I'm here. None of these COP treaties, none of these Paris treaties, none of these treaties are going to help us at all. They're simply just pieces of paper. I know because I was responsible a million years ago for signing the Montreal Protocol. And that was successful only because we received international funding and also because it was just one chemical involved. Now, we are talking now about change of lifestyle. So first, let us understand what is environment. It's not going to happen by simply putting treaties on the ground or worrying about gender. It is only about consumers, only about consumer movements. What you eat today, what you wear, what you aim for, your desires shape the world. Now, I'm going to give you certain examples, very simple examples, so that you can understand what to do. The first thing you have to realize is that environment is about trade-offs. If today you decide to eat something, you make a trade-off against something else. So let's just start with the main reasons why we are in the mess we're in. The main reasons for climate warming are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Now, I don't believe and I don't agree with anyone who says that India is a victim. In fact, we are one of the most aggressive countries when it comes to polluting the world. And it has nothing to do with our energy use at all. It has to do with our contribution towards the world's methane crisis. A chemical that we have successfully kept out of international treaties because it doesn't suit us, it doesn't suit China, and it doesn't suit Brazil. We are one of the three largest nations in contributing to methane. Now, methane is 24 times more lethal than carbon dioxide in global warming. The good thing is that if we reduce methane, if we reduce carbon dioxide, it will take 100 years to show a difference. If we reduce methane, it takes 4 years. So therefore, we can change global warming, but only if we concentrate on our methane concentration. Now, where does methane come from? Let's just start at the very beginning so that we understand where climate warming goes and hits, because if there are young people watching here, you must understand where the bullet is and where the bullet travels. This year, 360,000 hectares of land in Gujarat and Karnataka were eaten by locusts. Those locusts are expected to come back 500 times stronger by next year. And the reason for that is the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean has been the major ocean affected by climate change. And it has developed something called a dipole effect. In the dipole effect, one side of it is hot, one side of it is cold. And in that, I'm putting things really simply so that everybody can understand this. Where it is colder, like Australia, you have dust storms, you have had fires raging out of control where 1 billion animals have died, which is really 1 billion is 1 billion. And on this side, you've had massive rains in Kenya, Ethiopia, and East Africa, in which locusts have found moist soil in which to grow. So they grew so fast, so quickly, and so much that there was actually one swarm of 120 kilometers wide with 360 billion locusts in it. And that has eaten up 13 countries' entire food stocks for this year, so that they're back to being in the basket cases of the world. Now, those came from one side, we had from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, the same problem. This came via Pakistan, entered India, and took over Gujarat and Rajasthan. Now, we were so involved with COVID that nobody paid much attention to this, but they had a huge effect on us. And what is our response? What can you do against locusts? Nothing. You can do something that's even worse, which is what the government is doing, which is spraying organophosphates on the crops to prevent the locusts. Now, organophosphates may prevent locusts, but they will prevent human beings too, because they're completely the worst pesticides to use. So there is no situation, there is no magic bullet for greenhouse warming because you don't know where it strikes from. We know where it strikes from, it's just that we're doing nothing about it. Now, I'm going to look at the major areas that I believe we could change. We need to change our eating pattern. When you eat meat, India is the largest exporter of beef in the world, which means we're not even growing it to feed ourselves or our population. We are growing meat, the animals for meat, at the expense of what? Our forests. Anybody who tells you, especially the environment ministry, that our forests are on the increase, please don't believe it. As Madhavi Joshi will also tell you, we are down to 8%. And let me tell you how any government, not this government, but all governments cheat. They take an average and then they said, oh, we are up to 20%. Now, how is that? They'll take the average of 40% in Assam or the Northeast with the 2% of Delhi, Haryana, Punjab, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and then they take an average out. You can't average it out in forests. It has to be the same. No country can survive climate change without 20% of forests. And we have closer to 8%, which puts us into the absolutely fragile and non-survivable country range. Now, official pictures will actually deny this. And the reason for that is because they take the pictures when the sugarcane is at its height, so that you get huge amounts of forests in November and December, and then you suddenly don't have any forests in January. So when you eat meat, what do you actually do? All the animals grown for meat are grazing in our forests. All your export animals, meat export animals, which is buffaloes, cows, goats, are all in your forests. And when they're in your forest, they eat all the shoots, all the young trees, everything that could make a forest. So on one hand, the forest is not growing. On the other hand, we're chipping away the outskirts by people cutting wood, by governments denotifying forests. Just today, the Uttarakhand government has denotified India's only elephant sanctuary. Now, when a sanctuary is denotified, all it means is that industry will move in, cut all the trees, remove all the water bodies, and put in chemical plants. Now, every single week, enough forest is cut for development. And there's enough denotification going on to make it really frightening. The most frightening thing for me at the moment is the government order, which is going to come through or is coming through, which you should all look at, is that all the forests of the Andamans should be cut down and replaced with palm oil trees. This is becoming an order. I've seen the paperwork ready for it. The forest ministry is also very concerned, but nobody's going to stand up and say anything. Once that goes, the Andamans have gone. And palm oil is an illegal substance used to contaminate other oils. It is also carcinogenic. But for that, you will lose 5,000-year-old forests and an entire ecosystem of the Andamans, where recently the latest frog has been discovered. Now, so one, let me come back to meat. You are losing the forest because of meat. All your animals are grazing there, so you're losing the forest. Two, one cow emits 600 liters of methane. And the latest Harvard study is that when the cows are sick, when your cows and buffaloes are sick, as they are here, with cancer, brucellosis, foot and mouth, and many other diseases, mastitis to begin with, what happens is the amount of methane that they generate goes up from 600 liters to over 1,000 liters. So one cow, one buffalo is emitting 1,000 liters of methane a day. There is no way you can survive that amount of methane in the atmosphere, no matter what treaty you sign in Paris, Japan, Sweden, or Timbuktu. You need to stop them from being grown. And to stop them from being grown, you need to take two things. One, policy decisions that you will not export meat anymore. After all, Sri Lanka has said neither will it export, neither will it make, neither will it import beef. Because they just said it's climatically we cannot afford it. They've just taken this decision last month. Why are we feeding the rest of the world? It costs 60,000 liters of water to get meat from one buffalo cow. Do we have 60,000 liters per animal? We don't. We have women in Hyderabad standing at 3 in the morning to get one plastic pot of water from one tap. We have everywhere the greatest demand for all members of parliament is please give us what do you call these kya bolte hain? Water pumps, because there's no water left. And on the other hand, we're using all the water we have for washing, bathing, feeding, drinking meat animals. The second thing you lose is water. You've lost forests. You create methane. And then grain. Let us look at grain. 11 kilos of grain makes 1 kilo of meat. If we did not grow meat in India, we would have 11 times more food. That means prices would be lower, grain would be cheaper, the poor would get more in the PDS. You would not have hungry people if we did not give 11 kilos of grain per kilo to create 1 kilo of meat. It is the greatest iniquity. Anybody who has meat, I would say quite sharply, is anti-national, because there's no way that you have allowed India to survive with your food choices. So the first thing you have to do if you want to save the world is not pick up people's garbage and redistribute it. It is about stopping meat, and that you should make into a national issue. Just give the science behind it. The second thing is that nobody is planting trees. Nobody. We're just saying it. We're waiting for VIPs to come. Every time I inaugurate a hospital, I plant one silly tree in front of it. But the forest department is the fence that eats the trees. At this time, we have found that during this COVID time, when everybody was locked up, in Amravati and in, I forget that, Bhandara, 10,000 trees were cut by forest officials themselves in a tiger sanctuary in the core area, because they knew nobody would be watching them. So they cut them and they sold them. So if the fence is eating the trees, the forest department itself is corrupt. How can you stop poachers? Every day you go on the road, the maximum number of trucks in Uttar Pradesh are simply carrying dead logs. Have we done the slightest bit to stop this? We die every day. How many thousand million lakh people die? Each one of them is cremated. Each cremation is costing us 2 trees. Have we stopped it? Have we found alternatives? Why are we not insisting on either Bijli ke crematorium or gobar ke logs? One or the other, but we cannot keep using trees. So the end of this is to understand that rich or poor, each one of us uses 7 trees a year from the day we are born. The rich use it for paper, for furniture. The poor use it for burning, for carts, for whatever, but we use the same. Now, if you are 20 years old, you have used 140 trees. If you are 60 years old, how many trees could you have used? Have you put them back? Before talking about Paris and COP and this and that and ministries and paperwork and stuff, have you put what you owe back on the ground? If you haven't, then who can save India? Who can save the world? After all, your as the previous speaker said, your entire carbon sink is simply 2, the oceans and trees. Your water bodies are getting less and less, drying up. Your rivers are drying up. So where is your carbon sink? If your forest is 8%, who is going to take in? What is a carbon sink? Somebody that takes in the carbon dioxide that you produce. So if you don't have enough carbon sinks, your carbon dioxide is rising and rising by the minute. And along with that methane, along with that nitrous oxide. India is the biggest polluter of methane for 3 reasons. Not just the meat, which is 16% of the world's global warming is factored in only by meat eating. 2, we produce coal. 3, we produce rice. These are the three things that create methane. And in all three, India is number one. So let us not see ourselves as victims and talk rubbish, which is 1960s outdated, that India was a victim. We are an aggressor. We are at fault as much as more than perhaps anyone else because we didn't need to do this. So one, change your food choices. Two, plant trees. Plant back what you owe. You should be doing, literally it should be like brush your teeth. Brush your teeth, plant a tree. Have lunch, plant a tree. Go for a walk, plant a tree. Yeah, Delhi has 2%. So don't let us congratulate ourselves on the greening of Delhi. We have not done it. Have you taken the pavement outside your house and greened it? I have. I've made my house and the houses outside into total jungles. And as a result, my house is 4 degrees less in temperature. I don't even use air conditioners. In fact, I have to use heaters now because I'm shivering with cold because everything around me is so cold. The third thing you have to do is clothes. Meat and the eating of meat is 16%. The use and what you use of clothes is 18%. And the single most polluting industry in India, or perhaps the world. Here you are making two choices. Either you wear what grows naturally on the ground and can be renovated. Cotton, linen, hemp, even though I hate to say it, silk. Or you wear what has been mined from the ground, is non-renewable, you can never use again, leaves gaping holes in the ground and destroys forests by the billion. And that is polyester, nylon. But at the moment, instead of making sane choices, 70% of our clothes are now polyester, including your Banaras silk sarees. So when you make a choice, it's not just to wear sustainable, which is cotton, silk, and linen, hemp. Don't use bamboo, for God's sake, and don't use rayon. Rayon cuts down 1 billion forests because they may tell you that it's sustainable, but you have to cut a forest down to get rayon because it's made of the bark. But then after you choose cotton, let's suppose you choose cotton as I have, then you have to make a choice, which I have still not been able to make, which is stop chemical dyes. I went to Udaipur. The rivers there are running blood red. There were corpses all around from animals that could not drink any other water, so had to drink that water and they died. You put a finger in, you will not get it out. So that was the only, that was because the dyeing industry is upstream of that river. So why can't we have organic dyes? They're just as effective, just as beautiful. You don't, and they're not more expensive. If we were to make this fashionable, everything would work out much, much better. Secondly, no GM cotton, just normal cotton. We have to make the policies ourselves. You have social media, as the person before me spoke. You have social media. Why don't we use it for the good instead of just using it for abusing each other? If you were to conduct actual programs saying only cotton, and only organic cotton, only organically dyed cotton, overnight people would start wearing it. The third thing is leather. Children are the largest users of leather in this country because of schools. For some strange and maniacal reason, the schools insist on children coming to school with leather shoes. Now, the leather shoes were brought in by the British. They came from a cold country. We are a hot country. Leather does not breathe. It gives you corns. It inflicts your feet into squashed areas where they cannot spread, causing future patterns of disease in your feet. It does not do anything good. And more importantly, you do a trade-off between water and leather every time you buy something in leather. Why can't schools just insist on gym shoes? These rubber-based shoes, firstly, allow your feet to breathe. Two, are weather conscious, good for India, flexible, are cheaper than leather. The polish that you use on leather, that the long-suffering mother or the ayah has to polish your shoes with, are liver cancer are carcinogenic. And when you wash the socks and the polish goes into the water, it kills every single fish in the river. So you're making a choice between water straight off, water, fish, liver cancer, and your shoes. Now you have wonderful gym shoes. Why not use those? Why not make it a policy? You are an influential body. Why don't you make it a policy that all schools will wear just gym? Because now what's happening is you wear leather, then you have to change into gym shoes for sports, then you change back into leather. Why should we inflict this on our children at all? The fourth, so leather is your fourth thing. Fifth is stop cleaning your houses with, things that kill, because everything goes out into the soil. Your soil is totally dead polluted because of what you use as a cleaning equipment. Just a sec. Sit down. I use just water. The Indian Army is not tramping into my house, even though I have 28 dogs and 1 billion people. We still do extremely well. We still do extremely well with just water. And every now and then you can put a bit of lemon in the water and make the house smell fresh. And that's it. You don't need any more. So why not just stop whatever chemicals? Do an audit. Do an audit of what your house uses, buys, aims for, in terms of the things that I have said. And the last thing is eat organic. Eat organic. It's not more expensive now. And we have very good, very credible, day-to-day organic food. It's not an avocado-based diet. It is dal, chawal, sabzi, which you can easily get organically. In fact, go back to red rice. Go back to fiber-based rice, which now is freely available. We have 23,000 kinds of rice, of which 8,000 are freely available at any given time. Why not use those? That rice takes less water, creates less methane problems, and has far more fiber in it. So these are some of the things that I would suggest. If we can change our own patterns, we can then put pressure on the government. With what face can you go today and tell the government, don't cut down the Andaman's forests, if you yourself are using palm oil? And if you haven't bothered to notice where palm oil has been infiltrated into. With all of us today, including me, are wearing clothes, perhaps not Madhavi Joshi, but all the rest of us are wearing clothes that are using chemical dyes. So with what face can we go out and change the world? Why am I credible? Because firstly, I stopped eating meat 1 billion years ago and don't allow anybody around it. That's the only reason why I am confident enough to talk to you about what you do, because I do it before I say it. And what I haven't done as yet, I will tell you that I'm on my way to doing it. I just don't know how to do it as yet. But if we are to have credibility, we cannot use... One second, there's one dog who's gone completely mad. Stop it! Stop it! Gory goats. Sorry, I have... Stop it! I think she's just objecting to this. So the point is to change your own patterns. It's not difficult. Now, what is lulling us into doing nothing is the fact that we have nonsense going on about Paris and about COP and about governments and about ministries. Let us take for granted that we are not doing well and no ministry can fix it. No ministry. Even if we had the world's best environmentalists sitting there. Policies will come if you ask for them. How many of us have asked in Parliament or asked our members of Parliament to ask for something? How many of us? When I say stop meat export, it is seen as a Hindu thing. It's not. It's totally and only an environmental thing. It's a forest thing. It's a water thing. It's an equality thing. It's a woman thing. I detest the idea of women being sent out to get water. And it's only happening. It's a wildlife thing. Do you think that the tigers, the panthers are all dying because they're being killed for export? Not at all. 99% of wild animals are being killed by the shepherds who take their animals into the forest, don't want a wildcat killing them. So they poison the water holes so that the tigers, the leopards, and all the wildcats will die first. Just last month, 6 elephants have died because the farmers poisoned the water holes in Chhattisgarh. And the elephants drank it and they all died on the spot. So the point is that if we don't change our consumer patterns, nobody is going to get us out of this mess. If we don't create our forests again, what prevents you as a body from deciding that you want to green 100 kilometers? Or Mr. Gadkari is offering that the side of all highways he's willing to give to any body, and they will plant trees along it. Now he's made 1 million highways, all of which are completely barren. They look like moonwalking areas. And billion trees have been cut down for that. But nobody has taken the contract in 5 years to regreen the sites. Now, what happens is the forest department just invents figures. For instance, my DFO has given a report that last year in my constituency, Sultanpur, he planted 38 lakh trees. He cannot show me even one. After all, 38 lakh would stand out hugely. Not even one little baby tree anywhere. And nor did he have a nursery with more than 10,000 trees in it. So where are those 38 lakh trees? But he's been paid per tree. So unless you take it into your hands and say, okay, we will make, for women, we will make 100 sacred forests. There is a team of Sardars in Punjab, and they are making these little forests of just 1 acre each. And that 1 acre forest just takes 2 years to become a forest because they're using that Japanese thing. Madhavi, what's it called? I forget, that very famous tree planter, you know.
It's called Miyawaki.
That's right.
Miyawaki.
Yeah.
So they are using that system in Punjab. And it's being sponsored. You don't need much money, but it's being sponsored by somebody in Canada. And I can't tell you how effective it is. There's Nandita Krishna, who used to belong to your group in Chennai. She has made 50 sacred forests. And all she does is she takes an idol, she parks it in the middle of what is going to be a forest, says it comes out of the ground, the Devi has emerged, and quickly plants 1,000 trees around it. And there you have it. So it's not too difficult. I would invite you all to my constituency and give you as much land as you wanted, as long as you're prepared to make the forests. You know, for Narendra Modi ji's birthday this year, when everybody was busy doing other things, all I did was I took 2 acres of land and we called it the Namo Van, and we planted 10,000 trees in just 2 acres. In the same style, you know, that the closer you put them, the faster they'll grow. So we can do that. I mean, I can give you 1,000 suggestions, but I'm just sticking with the main reasons. 18% clothes, 16% meat. The rest of it is leather and trees. And chemicals that you use in your daily work. What goes into your shampoo? What goes into your soap? Have you even bothered to do an audit? When I became a Minister of Women and Child in 2014, I actually went to my colleague Ram Bilas Paswan and I said that during Atalji's time, I made the red and green dot on food. Now we need to have the red and green dot on consumables, not consumers, on consumer items that are in our bathrooms, soap, shampoo. So we did. He passed it, he made it an order in 2015. And the entire industry went to court in Bombay and till today are sitting on a stay against it because all your soaps have meat in them, your shampoos have meat in them. Many of your wines have fish in them. In fact, all your red wine has fish in it. So unless you strengthen your consumer right to know movement. Where do you know we are being attacked from? Anyway, it's now turning into a rant. So I shall thank you all, and I shall especially thank Radhika because she gave me a donation from her best friend, who is her dog, for People for Animals. Thank you.